During a casual game of soccer, Victor Wembanyama slipped and appeared to injure himself. But that wasn't the biggest story. Spurs ownership reportedly had a strong reaction after seeing their franchise superstar taking that kind of risk. And it looks like this could end up changing what Wemby is allowed to do off the court. Let me break it down. The side quest. Let me set the scene for you, because you really have to picture this to understand how strange it was. It is Friday night, July 25th, 2026. It is hot and sticky, the kind of humid Texas evening where the air feels like a wet towel on your face. We are at the Katy International Sports Complex, a set of recreation fields in Katy, a suburb sitting about 30 miles west of downtown Houston. This is not a stadium. It is the kind of place where regular people show up after work, split into teams, and kick a ball around under the floodlights until they are tired. A normal, sweaty, forgettable pickup game. Except one of the players is the best young basketball player alive, because standing in the middle of all these local weekend athletes wearing a 2024-25 Paris Saint-Germain away kit with his own name and the number 1 on the back is Victor Wembanyama, the San Antonio Spurs superstar, the reigning defensive player of the year, a man so tall that he looks like the field itself shrank around him. And he is not here for a photo op. He is not here to wave, sign 3 autographs, and leave. He is here to play, and he is going to play for real. Now, if you only know Wemby as a basketball alien, this probably makes no sense to you. Why would a franchise cornerstone risk his ankles on a random turf field with strangers? But if you actually know his story, this is the most natural thing in the world. Because before basketball ever claimed him, soccer had him first. Victor was born in January of 2004 near Versailles, in the Paris region of France. And like a lot of French kids, he grew up playing everything: judo, basketball, and soccer, where he mostly stood in goal as a goalkeeper. That detail matters because goalkeeping is all about angles, timing, and reading where the ball is going before it gets there. Sound familiar? That is exactly what he does now when he swats shots into the third row. He has talked about those keeper days with a kind of dry humor, once joking that his worst losing streak ever came back when he played football, that he was the goalkeeper, but that it was not really his fault. He was a kid who lost games in goal and grew into a giant who wins them at the rim. And soccer was not some quick childhood phase he outgrew and forgot. It was one piece of a normal, multi-sport French childhood right alongside judo. He only started playing organized basketball around the age of 6 or 7, learning the game under his own mother, Elodie de Fautero, a former player and youth coach. By the time he was 10, he had joined the Nanterre youth system, and basketball slowly took over his life. But the ball at his feet never fully went away. Locals back in his hometown of Le Chesnay have said they still spotted him playing soccer with friends on visits home, even as a grown NBA star, and yes, still often standing in goal. And the soccer never left him. This is the part people forget. He is not a basketball player who tried soccer once for a laugh. He is a lifelong, die-hard Paris Saint-Germain supporter, a fan who has said plainly that PSG is his team, full stop. His childhood idols were not just basketball players. They were soccer men, the great German goalkeeper Manuel Neuer and the magician Ronaldinho. Today, he admires Kylian Mbappe, copies Mbappe's arm cross celebration after he scores, and has called Lionel Messi his soccer GOAT. That fandom even leaked into his Spurs life. He helped inspire a loud, ultra-style supporter group nicknamed the Jackals, modeled partly on the passionate wall of noise atmosphere he grew up loving at PSG. So when the off-season comes and the gym doors close for the day, kicking a ball around is not a random risk. It is him going home in a way to the very first sport that made him feel like an athlete. He has done it before in Costa Rica, he has done it in Tokyo, and on this particular Friday, he did it in Katy, Texas. And here's the thing that got lost once the panic started: he was good. Not good for a basketball player, good, period. Local reporting and witnesses said he played for roughly 2 full hours, not a quick cameo. He scored. How many depends on who you ask, which tells you how casual and unofficial this whole thing was. Some local coverage said he potted a couple of goals, while Houston's KHOU 11 reported it was closer to half a dozen. He set up teammates with assists. He pulled off a clean spin move, the kind of roulette turn you would expect from someone half his height and none of his shoe size. He showed what witnesses called a genuinely soft, deft touch for a man of his frame, and then he celebrated like Mbappe, arms crossed, grinning, soaking in a moment that clearly made him happy. When it was over, he stayed. He took photos with fans and got mobbed as he walked off the pitch, with at least one person trying out a little rusty French just to get his attention to the folks who were actually there. This was a gift. Houston area outlets framed it exactly that way, as a delightful surprise drop-in, an off-season side quest from a player who was in the Katy area anyway, reportedly working out with the legendary big man Hakeem Olajuwon nearby. San Antonio outlets treated it as just another chapter in Wemby's book of quirky off-season adventures. And here's an idea that makes all of this more than a fun hobby. Some smart basketball minds actually think the soccer is part of why he moves the way he does. Steve Nash, a Hall of Fame point guard who grew up on soccer himself, has pointed to those early years of kicking a ball around as a real source of Wemby's freakish agility, his balance, his footwork, and his feel for space at a size where nobody should be that coordinated. All those hours in goal, tracking angles and reacting to a ball flying at him, may have quietly wired the instincts he now uses to erase shots at the rim. So the soccer is not a distraction from his basketball. In a strange way, it might be one of the roots of it, and he loves it for a simple reason. Goals are hard to come by in soccer compared to buckets in basketball, so when one finally goes in, it feels bigger, it means more. So far, this is a feel-good story. A generational talent having a normal, joyful human night. There is no villain here. There is no crisis. There is a happy giant scoring goals and hugging strangers, and that is what makes what happened next so wild. Because none of that footage is what set the internet on fire. The 2 hours of skill, the goals, the assists, the class act with the fans, all of it took a back seat. What went viral was one tiny, awkward half-second moment. One slip, one knee touching the turf, and from that single frame, an entire fan base would lose its collective mind. And a story about a man having fun would twist into a story about a man supposedly putting a championship window at risk. So what exactly was on that clip, and why did it hit people so hard? The panic. Here's what actually happened on the clip, calmly, before we get to how people reacted to it. A couple of days after the game, around July 27th, a short video started spreading. It was amplified first through a Bleacher Report Instagram reel, then blasted across X by big NBA fan accounts, with the original footage traced back to a TikTok user who happened to be filming that night. In the clip, Wemby tries to control a pass in or near the penalty area. His planted foot slides out on the slick turf. His knee dips and touches the ground in a motion that, if you freeze it at the wrong instant, looks scary. And then, immediately, he stands right back up under his own power. No limp, no grabbing at the knee, no trainer running on, he just keeps playing. In fact, the media accounts sharing the video said outright that he was completely fine, that there was no injury at all. But the internet does not run on "he was fine." The internet runs on fear, and this clip poured gasoline on a very specific, very real fear that Spurs fans have been carrying for over a year. The reaction was not concern, it was full-blown panic, dressed up as comedy. One widely shared post said the Spurs front office's heart just sank to their backside. That line got passed around thousands of times. An entire Roundup article got built around the framing that Spurs staff went into cardiac arrest watching that. Fans were not laughing with him, they were begging him. Comments poured in telling him in much saltier language to sit down and go compete, reminding him that at 7'4" this would stop being funny very fast. People openly demanded that the team ban him from soccer, from every non-basketball sport, forever. And the outlets fed the fire right back, running headlines about a fan base holding its breath and having a heart attack over one recreational slip. Now, you might be sitting there thinking these people are being ridiculous. It was a knee touch. He got up, relaxed. And honestly, a few voices online said exactly that. Some fans, and even an ESPN Spurs reporter, tried to talk everyone off the ledge, reminding the timeline that the man is not made of tissue paper. But that calm was the minority. The loud, dominant sound was pure dread. And to understand that dread, you cannot just laugh at it. You have to understand where it comes from. Because Spurs fans are not paranoid for no reason. They are paranoid because the last 2 years taught them to be. Let me walk you through the scars, because this is the real engine of the panic. Back in February of 2025, the Spurs announced that Wembanyama had been diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis, a blood clot in his right shoulder. A blood clot in a 21-year-old athlete. That is the kind of news that stops a franchise cold. It was found after All-Star Weekend, after he first noticed some swelling out in Wyoming. At the time, he had played 46 games and was putting up absurd numbers, right around 24 points, 11 rebounds, and nearly 4 blocks a night, and just like that, his season was over. Doctors called it an isolated issue with a full recovery expected, and he was cleared to return by the middle of that summer. But it did not matter how clean the recovery was. That one-word clot has haunted this fan base ever since. It is the reason every awkward moment now gets treated like a 5-alarm fire. And it did not stop there. The very next season brought more. He missed roughly a dozen games with a left calf strain. Then, on New Year's Eve, in the middle of a wild 134-132 home win over the Knicks, he hyperextended his left newile battling for an offensive rebound against big men Karl Anthony Towns and Jordan Clarkson. He left the game with about 10.5 minutes to go and limped straight to the locker room. Every heart in San Antonio stopped. He did come back and sit on the bench for the finish, and the MRI the next day thankfully showed no ligament damage. He tried to wave it off, calling it just a hyperextension that should be minimal, but the fear was already logged. Then came the playoffs and another gut punch. In the first round against Portland, he slipped while driving against Drew Holiday, fell face first, and slammed his head on the floor, suffering a concussion. He wanted to keep playing, but the league league's concussion protocol kept him out of the next game. The Spurs actually won that one without him, and he returned right after. But the image stuck. Do you see the pattern now? A clot, a calf, a knee, a head. And notice how two of those started the exact same way this soccer clip did, with a slip, with his feet going out from under a body that has a very long way to fall. So when fans saw that turf slide, they did not see a soccer blooper. They saw the first frame of every nightmare they had already lived, and the stakes had never been higher, which is the final piece. Because this was not some struggling lottery team. Despite all those injuries, Wemby had just dragged the Spurs all the way to the 2026 NBA Finals, their first trip back since 2014. They had knocked off the mighty Oklahoma City Thunder in a 7-game Western Conference Finals to get there, before finally running out of gas and losing to the New York Knicks 4-1. He had just become the first unanimous Defensive Player of the Year in league history, the youngest ever to win it. And just weeks earlier, in July, he had signed a massive 5-year extension worth about $252 million. And here's the part that makes the stakes even heavier. He did not squeeze the team for every last dollar. The deal was built at 25% of the salary cap instead of the 30% supermax he was on track to qualify for, a structure that could have pushed his total closer to $300 million. In plain terms, he left roughly $50 million on the table on purpose to give the Spurs the financial room to keep his young teammates around him. To finalize it, the team's most important people, Chairman Peter J. Holt, the CEO, the general manager, and the head coach, all flew across the world to Paris to shake his hand in person. He posted afterward that he was here to stay, whatever it takes. A franchise had just bet its entire future on this man's body, and he had just bet his own money on it too. And now that body was hitting the dirt on a public field for free in a borrowed soccer jersey. So the fans lost it. The media lost it. Everyone with an emotional or financial stake in this guy seemed to be screaming at once, which raises the one question the title of this whole saga is built on. If the fan base went off and the media went off, then what about the people who actually signed that $250 million check? What did the owners do? The silence and the stakes. Here is the twist, and it is the biggest one in this whole story. The people you would most expect to react, the ones with the most money on the line, the owners and the front office, did the one thing nobody online was doing. Nothing, not a word. When reporters and analysts went digging, checking local outlets, national outlets, and social monitoring, what they found from the top of the organization was total, complete quiet. There was no statement from ownership, no comment from Chairman Peter J. Holt, no reaction from CEO R.C. Buford or General Manager Brian Wright, no word from head coach Mitch Johnson, no leak from the medical staff, no anonymous Spurs source tells us note buried in any credible article. The franchise treated this exactly like what it was, a grown man's private hobby on his own time, and they said nothing at all. And that gap, that huge distance between the online screaming and the institutional calm, is actually the most interesting thing about this entire episode, because it forces a real question. Was all that fan panic actually stupid? Or underneath the jokes and the salty comments, were they pointing at something true? And this is where I have to be fair to the fans, because they are right about one thing even if they were dramatic about it. This player really is that important. The reason a harmless slip could trigger a citywide heart attack is that the Spurs, as currently built, are two very different teams depending on whether number one is on the floor. And we actually have receipts for this. We have watched what they look like without him. Now, at first glance, the numbers seem to argue against the panic, because the Spurs have survived stretches without him before, and survived them well.
Considering the Spurs went 9-3 without Wembanyama in the lineup due to injury.
9-3. That is a strong record for any team missing its franchise player, and it is the exact stat that fuels the "they're fine without him" crowd. It is the kind of number you throw in someone's face to prove the panic is overblown. And on its own, in a vacuum, it looks convincing. A team that goes 9-3 without its superstar does not sound like a team one slip away from collapse. But a record without context can lie to you, and this one does.
But 7 of those wins were over suboptimal teams with distinct talent deficits.
There it is. That is the catch that fans instinctively understood, even if they could not put it into words. Beating up on weaker teams is not the same as beating the ones that matter. A backup-heavy Spurs squad can grind out wins against the bottom of the league. That does not mean it can trade punches with a real contender in a playoff series. And the analysis is blunt about what changes when the competition gets serious.
When you encounter a team as historically good as OKC, you need the French connection.
You need the French connection. You need Wemby. Against the good teams, the ones standing between you and a title, there is no small ball trick, no hot shooting night, no clever rotation that replaces a 7'4" rim-protecting, shot-making unicorn. The depth is real, the system is real, but the ceiling of this team lives and dies with one man's health. That is not fan hysteria. That is just the math of a roster built around a generational talent.
But the point being, the team is 9-3. Just wanted to check that.
And you can hear that exact argument playing out in real time whenever people debate this team. One side waves the 9-3 like a flag, insisting the Spurs are just fine, that the guards can carry it, that the machine keeps humming without him.
9-3 without Wemby.
Nah, they balling.
They balling, sure, against the schedule they got. But every honest version of that debate eventually circles back to the same wall. Great regular season depth is a wonderful thing to have. It is not the same as a championship engine. And the Spurs are not the first great team to learn that the hard way. Look around the league, and you see the same lesson written over and over in different jerseys.
The Denver Nuggets went 10-6 without Nikola Jokic. That sentence couldn't exist in previous seasons.
Denver went 10-6 without Nikola Jokic, and everyone treated it like a miracle. Precisely because for years the Nuggets fell apart the second he sat down. Even the best supporting casts in basketball are built to lean on one irreplaceable giant. When that giant is out, survival becomes the goal, not dominance. And sometimes a team even convinces itself it is better off, right up until reality shows up.
At least at this particular moment in time in this series, we probably were better without him.
You hear that and it sounds crazy. A team claiming it was better without its star. But that is the trap. Depth can flatter you in the regular season and betray you in the playoffs. Because in a 7-game series, the other team hunts your weakness relentlessly, and there is no hiding a hole where a franchise player used to be. The Spurs know this. It is the entire reason their offseason was built the way it was. Because here's the part that ties the panic and the silence together. That extension he signed was not just a huge number. It was a deliberate discount, a structure that gives San Antonio room to keep its young core, players like Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper, around him for years. The entire franchise blueprint, the whole championship window, is designed around this one body staying healthy and playing at an MVP level deep into the next decade. A serious long-term injury would not just cost them games. It would collapse the ceiling of the whole project, turning a real title contender into a good but not great playoff team overnight. That is what fans were really screaming about. Not the knee, the window. So let us land this plane where the facts actually landed. The owners did not go off at him. There is no reporting that anyone in the organization reacted at all. He did not injure himself. He got up under his own power and kept playing, scoring and celebrating like nothing happened. The whole event was, in the end, a happy man doing a happy thing on a Friday night. What turned it into a saga was not danger. It was value. The panic was so loud, so instant, and so extreme, precisely because everyone knows what this player is worth. To the Spurs, to the sport, and to the next 10 years of basketball. Fans do not lose their minds over players who do not matter. The cardiac arrest they felt was really just love, mixed with fear, aimed at the one guy they cannot afford to lose. And maybe that is the real story here. Not that the owners went off, but that they did not have to, because a whole fan base was already doing the panicking for them. One looping clip at a time, over a knee that touched the grass for half a second, and then got right back up. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.